Hello, I'm Leanne Young. We are marching towards spring in our busy city. This is our Vancouver. Coming up, how skate parks kept communities strong during the pandemic. And Mind and Soil's Jordan Mara offers tips for growing plants in any weather. But first, a new art exhibit about hair, identity, and the problem of westernized beauty standards. When it comes to identity, hair plays a huge part. How we cut it, wear it, and color it says a lot about us and even more about the society we live in. Karen Jones is a Vancouver artist and instructor. She was an artist in residence at the Burrard Arts Foundation and created an exhibit focusing on the damaging effects of standardized ideas of beauty. Hi, Karen. Thanks for joining us. So, Karen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, great to have you here. So we're showing images of your hair art made from hair, of course, but you want us to think about the origins of this hair. So where did this hair come from?
So these are hair extensions that I purchased from a shop in Vancouver called Abantu. They sell a lot of hair extensions, and it is human hair. I did a lot of research about the hair trade a number of years ago because it really is an interest in the hair trade that set me on my journey thinking about art and identity. And so a lot of the hair extensions come from Asia. There are also sources in Russia and Ukraine, I think, but a lot of it comes from Asia. And so the hair is actually acquired from women in a number of ways, some honest, some not. And then it's processed for sale around the world and mostly in the West because that's where people can afford to buy it.
Right.
So, yeah.
And so how big is the wig and hair extension trade that you talk about that sources hair elsewhere?
Oh, it's massive. I mean, I can't really put a dollar amount on it, but it's like definitely millions, maybe billions. It's a huge industry, and you've probably seen in the last few years it's getting even bigger, where I noticed a shop in Metrotown recently that sells mostly hair extensions, and it's just really exploded in the last few years.
And a lot of this hair that gets imported, it doesn't look the same way as when it, came off of somebody's head. So what does it say about us that we import hair and then change the way that it looks?
Well, the interesting thing to me is just that it's actually somebody else's body part. And so it's processed in different ways. This hair most likely has been bleached because for this exhibition, I'm using mostly blonde, or actually all blonde hair. And I just was thinking about the idea that, when I was growing up, I was a kid in the 70s. And obviously, I'm a mixed race person. And around what I was seeing around me on magazine covers and everything, all of the images that we would see of beauty back then were of these blonde, blue-eyed women. So I was really thinking about this blondness as a commodity. So you can actually go out and purchase blondness. And I wanted people to kind of think about that and think about where those ideals of beauty come from and how it relates to their own identity.
Absolutely, and it's interesting, as you say, that it's actually somebody else's body part. Never thought about it that way. So what is it like to work with this hair? What's the texture like?
It really does feel like you're running your hands through somebody else's hair. It's hair. It doesn't feel any different than it would on somebody's head.
And what did you do to the hair to make your point about Western beauty standards and erasure of culture?
Yeah, so I basically, there is actually a long history of, I was looking into a lot of Victorian things that happened in Victorian times, and there's a tradition of making jewelry and actually wall art out of hair. They used to make intricate hair wreaths usually it was a sentimental process. It was hair from family members, from loved ones, and they would turn it into art or jewelry. And so for these pieces, I'm thinking about, okay, so this hair that I've purchased is completely anonymous. I don't know anything about the women whose heads it came from. I don't even, in most cases, you can't even tell which country it came from. So I'm kind of referencing that time of that sentimental, more personal art, but I'm turning it into something by making it something very abstract and geometrical. It's talking about how, okay, well, what is, if this is a body part, how are we anonymizing it, and why are we anonymizing it, and is there what, you know, like just kind of thinking about our relationship to that.
And so I also want to know, of course, how can we actually see your work in person?
Yeah, so because I had this residency at the Burrard Arts Foundation, there's an exhibition there that I opened after the residency, and this work is on show until March 19th. So you can go down to the Burrard Arts Foundation, 258 East First, and have a look at my show and also the other artist, Sarah Khan, who they're usually two artists who are in residency at the same time.
And you know, you've touched on it a little bit, but Karen, what do you want all of us who come and see your exhibit, what do you want us to walk away with as a message?
I guess I want people to think about, like, definitely for me, it's about race and culture and ethnicity. But even if you think of it not in those terms, I want people to kind of think about how women's beauty has been commodified, and think about why we have certain ideas of what's beautiful and what isn't. And yeah, just kind of think about those things and how do we feel about those things, and are we happy about them? Are we not?
Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about. Thank you so much for this, Karen. We appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you so much.
This is our Vancouver.
There's a new series on CBC Television and CBC Gem looking into a little-known part of Canadian history. The Porter takes place in the 1920s and opens new doors to this country's Black history. The CBC's Jackson Weaver has the details, including a small personal surprise.
Jazz, gangsters, and rum running, all parts of The Porter, a new drama series from CBC and BET, and a rare showcase of Black Canadian stories on screen.
Nice. And cut. Hey, Paul, can we hold that 1 second?
And putting that history in a TV show, inspired by the lives of train porters in the 1920s and created by a nearly all-Black cast and crew, is making history of a different kind.
I couldn't be any more prouder. We're seeing a show from a Black perspective, which I think is kind of rare.
If I wanted to get the porters into a union, what's the first thing I should do?
Those porters fought to create North America's first ever Black labor union. But while reporting the story, I made a personal discovery of my own. A newspaper article showing that my grandfather was a porter too.
This part is being reordered.
This filmmaker says that surprise is a symptom of a larger problem. Too often, Black history in Canada focuses on one thing: slavery.
When we did get taught something about Black history, it was always the Underground Railroad. That was it.
There are these huge omissions that really color your sense of history.
To help fix that, Sud Sutherland is making a new documentary of Black Canadian stories, part of a growing push of productions uncovering and celebrating untold parts of this country's past.
So we thought, well, there's more to Canada and its history than the Underground Railroad.
And he's not alone.
Did you know that Toronto's first taxi cab service was a Black-owned business?
Viola Benjamin started a TikTok series telling stories that hundreds of thousands are viewing.
Not enough of our Black history shared. We do not have the conversations that we should. The Black experience is not acknowledged, and in my day-to-day, I think it's very important. So I'm going to be that person who sheds light, starts conversations, even if it's difficult.
And the hope is a wave of new productions like The Porter will help unpack more stories about the Black Canadian experience. Jackson Weaver, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, time for one of our favorite features when we showcase a number of the photographs sent in by you, our audience. First, Manita Lam was out on the beach of Spanish Banks and took in this amazing low tide scene. Wonderful image, Manita. Thank you for sending it to us. And Johnny Hayward took in a foggy morning on Mount Seymour near Deep Cove. Amazing photo there. Thank you for that. Gorgeous. And finally, Renee Warren did the hike to Jug Island and looked out to it and the snowy hills across the inlet. Great capture there, Renee. Send us more. You can email them to bcphotos@cbc.ca. That's bcphotos, all one word, @cbc.ca. Julian Besa is someone who loves to connect with people through the lens of his camera. He's an independent film producer and part of our CBC Creator Network. Besa took to the streets of Vancouver as we were beginning to emerge from the original lockdowns of the pandemic, searching for stories. He found so many examples of healing, friendship, and shared space at the skate park. Take a look.
This started as a post-lockdown project. Each week I'd pick a new spot and spend the day there with my camera, talking to strangers. Every place has a different personality. The skate park was intimidating at first, until I spoke to the skaters. There's a hidden beauty behind this chaos. What is it about skateboarding that brings people together?
When I skateboard, it makes me feel weightless, where I'm moving my body and like wind is blowing through my hair and like sun is on my skin and I feel really content. When I was 19, turning 20, I was in a treatment center for anorexia and I was really, really sick. Like my heart almost stopped, I was really underweight. And I remember like changing into the hospital gown and I felt like no one on earth could possibly understand the amount of guilt and shame that I felt for being sick. I definitely hit sort of a bottom where I was like really underweight, partying a lot, just hated my life. I think I would have died if I didn't get sober. So I've been sober for 15 months and it's been a trip being sober. My name is Daisy. I'm 23 and don't always love who I am all the time, but I don't hate it either. And that's progress for me.
Right now the bar is literally just do I exist here. My name's Anahid, or I go by Nana. I'm a writer, I rock climb, and in February I started skateboarding. I realized pretty young that I'm kind of a compulsive liar, so I should probably just channel that into writing fiction. I was in the closet. I just got really good at it as a means of survival. And I identify as trans and non-binary, and I have long hair, so people assume I'm a girl. So navigating a double life for like moving between realities and trying to keep the balance. Like I don't necessarily just want to skateboard to like be good at it. I feel like having the time in my life to like consistently work at something and like enjoy progressing at it and feel connected and entitled to it, to me is like a huge privilege. That it's been a challenge these last few years, especially to like be here.
I've got several people I've made connection with here. One of them is Nathan. He goes up the ramp and goes across on the wall and goes down the next ramp, so he's quite impressive. You know, maybe not everybody is doing as much as they could, but you got to respect, well, that's where they're at, and everybody is working to improve themselves, to develop their whole being. The best thing is to just have conversations. You know, that's the way that we get to know each other and to be part of each other in a certain way, right?
I still don't really know what I'm looking for. Community, belonging. After these last few years, I'm just grateful to be outside, talking with people in the park.
Darn.
Coming up, years of satellite imagery has revealed lakes and rivers are retreating faster in cities than in rural areas. What does that mean for your local watering hole? Johanna Wagstaffe has the study after the break.
Water shortages, dry lake beds, creeks that disappear. This has been the signature of bodies of water in urban areas in recent years. And now, 30 years of satellite data is backing up those trends. A research group from northern Italy analyzed 3 decades of satellite imagery of areas of the United States and developed a model that is able to predict the distribution of water loss in connection with cities. And while the number of people living in cities is also growing, this means big consequences for a lot of people. In fact, by 2050, 70% of the world's population will be living in cities. Extracting more water directly from rivers and springs and exploiting groundwater, along with increasing evaporation, represent a threat to the conservation of our surface waters. To tackle these issues, the researchers wanted to know exactly what distance of rivers and lakes from cities these effects are seen. Thanks to the data, they were able to define a mathematical model to measure exactly that, the spatial influence of human settlements on surface water depletion. Their models show how the depletion of surface water resources rises exponentially the closer one gets to human settlements. Climate also plays a role. In areas with a temperate climate, the depletion of surface water is higher around the cities, while in drier regions, the impact of urban areas on surface waters affects a significantly larger area, so urban sprawl is much more affected. These results can help to define strategies of water management that will contribute to mitigating the effects of urbanization and climate change on ecosystems. And while the study looked at cities south of the border, the same strategy can be applied to cities all over the world, including here in Canada. And now, you're Science Smart. If you have a science question on your mind, send me a tweet. I'll try to get it answered.
I'm Mark, and this is our Vancouver.
And thank you for that, Johanna. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Leanne Young. The BC Home and Garden Show is on at BC Place, March 10th to the 13th. If you're fully vaccinated, you can walk through exhibits, meet experts, and see celebrities from the home design world. And Jordan Mara of Mind and Soil will be there, and he's with us now to give us some tips to keep your garden thriving, no matter what the weather does. Welcome. Nice to have you, Jordan.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
So I can see you're clearly outside right now, and I know you've got a little bit of a setup behind you. Can you walk us through your garden?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at right behind me here is my garden setup with just a couple of different structures I've put in place to kind of help with any inclement or extreme weather that we might run into over the course of the season.
So what is involved in that setup? How do you prevent some of that inclement weather from affecting your plants?
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of it, is that one of the factors of gardening that we have no control over is Mother Nature and the weather. And so it's really kind of how do we work in partnership with it. And so last season, as an example, in June, we had the heat dome, and the previous season we had kind of January where it was really, really cold. And so we need to be thinking through what structures can we put in place for those varying levels of kind of weather that we might experience. So on this front here, what we have is essentially like a shade cover for those really, really hot days. So if we get another heat dome this year, putting a shade cover over top of the garden will cut anywhere from 40 to 90% of the sun and really decrease the temperature down at the garden level where our plants are growing and be less stressful for them. And then when we go down to the actual soil here, what we could see is that during those warmer days at the soil level, we can also be making cooler kind of environments for our soil and plants. And just like how you wouldn't wear a dark t-shirt on a really hot sunny day, we can put a light colored mulch down around our plants. And that's going to help keep it a little bit cooler for them on those really hot days as well.
Makes a lot of sense. It seems like common sense. A light-colored mulch, of course. Okay, so March, clearly a bit of a wet month. We can see it's raining where you are right now. So a lot of us eager to get back into the garden. What should we be thinking about planting right now?
Yeah, so for right now, a lot of the planting that I do is actually indoors and underneath grow lights. And so if individuals haven't given that a try before, I'd really encourage them to try it out this year because you're kind of starting in the most ideal environment and conditions for your plants, which allows them to then make it into the garden much larger, much more kind of full of life than if they were direct sown outside and taking just a little bit longer to develop.
A great tip, using a grow light. Okay. And so what can we do when we plant early and then say we are already outside planting out there and then a cold snap happens, January as you called it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to walk you over to this other structure here. And so what I have right behind me here is that a lot of individuals, if they're fortunate enough, will utilize a greenhouse. And for myself, that's something that I haven't been able to afford just yet. And so what you can do is create your own little DIY structures. And so with this one, all that I did was grab some old scrap wood and then wrapped it in some extra kind of poly that I had to create a mini greenhouse over top of this bed with a hinge on the top so that I can open it up. And that's going to keep it anywhere from kind of like 6 to 10, 12 Celsius warmer. Okay. And if you didn't want to build your own DIY structure, a really great little hack is just to buy a clear storage tote and then drill a couple of holes at the top for a little bit of airflow and then pop that over top of the plants in your garden early on in the season to get it anywhere from kind of 10 to 12 degrees warmer in those early months of the gardening season. And for anybody that's in a smaller space, these little devices called Groyas, you bury them into the garden and then they water the garden from beneath the surface. So there's zero evaporation, uses way, way, way less water than irrigating at the surface level.
Okay, good to keep that one in mind as well. So gardening has been a salvation for so many during the pandemic, a great way to go outside. So how has getting your hands dirty in the dirt every day helped you through it?
Yeah, so my journey with gardening actually started from a mental health perspective back in 2013. And so anytime that I'm looking for peacefulness or calmness or some restoration, where I go is ultimately to the garden to get my hands dirty. And there's something about it that is just so therapeutic. And so in the midst of the pandemic, rather than just experiencing that for myself, I actually wrapped up all my other work and started building Mind and Soil with the hope and the intention of introducing 1 million individuals to gardening's mental health benefits. So everything that we do now is kind of led with the focus of helping folks get their hands dirty and connect with those mental health benefits.
That's great. And have you hit your million yet?
Pardon me?
Have you hit the 1 million people yet?
No, not yet, but we're getting there.
You're getting there, and you know what? You are going to be talking to more people at the BC Home and Garden Show. What are you going to be doing there?
Yeah, so at the BC Home and Garden Show, I am going to be presenting alongside West Coast Seeds on how to go about eating from the garden 365 days of the year. And then I'm also going to be giving a talk just on my own on how to incorporate mindfulness into your gardening this coming season.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Jordan Mara of Mind and Soil.
Perfect.
If you want to go see some live music, Andre Rieu is a violin superstar. He's playing a show here at Pacific Coliseum March 26th, and we have a pair of tickets to give away. To try to win, email ourvancouver@cbc.ca, that's ourvancouver@cbc.ca, and put RIEU in the subject line. His shows are full of lavish costumes and visual effects. He's known internationally as the King of the Waltz. Good luck with the ticket giveaway.
I knew when I asked you to be cool about what I was telling you, you do the opposite of.
And Billie Eilish is playing Rogers Arena March 24th. We don't have tickets to give away for that one, though. This is a rescheduled concert from the earlier one in the pandemic. All concerts require proof of vaccination.
Hey, Grant Lawrence here from CBC Music, and it's been a very sad couple of weeks for Canadian music fans, musicians, media, and industry members alike as we mourn the sudden passing of Toronto musician Dallas Good. Dallas was best known for his unreal musical chops that had been on display in many bands, including the Sadies, for the past 28 years.
When I come back, the first thing on my mind is what I'm missing. Don't talk to me right now, I'm not the one that you should stop and try to question. Next time you make up your mind, you're gonna have an educated answer.
From their second album, which is a classic entitled Tremendous Efforts, that was the Sadies with Dallas Good on lead vocals there on that song called Flash. Now, the music world unexpectedly lost this great Toronto musician while he was under care for coronary illness. Dallas formed the Sadies with his brother Travis alongside Sean Dean and Mike Belitsky back in 1994. Dallas and Travis come from a musical family. Their dad is Bruce Good from the Good Brothers. And if you were to take a look at the guest musician list on any of their albums or on any of the bands they worked with, it's like a who's who of the music scene, singing and playing. That's what it was all about for Dallas Good and the Sadies.
I leave the party at 3 a.m. alone, thank God. In a valley on from the bride, it's the devil I love, the devil I love.
Yeah, that's Nico Case and the Sadies on Late Night with Conan O'Brien from back in 2006. Nico Case was one of the Sadies' longest collaborators going back to the 1990s. And at some point, when you look back at Dallas Good's long career now cut short, you find yourself wondering who didn't Dallas and the Sadies work with. The Mekons, Andre Williams, Neil Young, Buffy Sainte-Marie, Blue Rodeo, Shadowy Men on a Shadowy Planet, John Doe, Randy Bachman, and this Canadian legend. That's the Sadies with the collaborative album they made with Gord Downie back in 2014. It's called Gord Downie, the Sadies, and the Conquering Sun. So what's very clear is that the Sadies were known as a reliably awesome band, but they stood tall on their own as well, as they proved many times over, including on their album Darker Circles, which was shortlisted for the Polaris Music Prize.
What's in my head has already been said. White pages are all I can see. But now I find this wasting my time is the worst thing you can do to me. Same old stories no one ever believes. Finding answers that we'll never need. Postcards that nobody reads, never reads.
Amazing. That's Dallas Good and the Sadies at their best right there, channeling the Byrds and Graham Parsons and musical members of their own family on that song, Postcards. Dallas Good and the Sadies were in the process of making a new album with Richard Reed Parry from Arcade Fire when Dallas died. And that album will be released this spring. Dallas Good of the Sadies passed away of natural causes on February 17th, 2022, at the age of 48. He was truly one of the kindest and coolest souls in music, grace, manners, talent, and style. So from everyone here at CBC Music, we send out our heartfelt condolences to the Sadies and their families. Rest in peace, Dallas. Thank you for all the music.
Don't cry for me. Remember that no one and nothing is free. Nothing is nothing. And everything's so far away.
And coming up, have you heard of NFTs? Non-fungible tokens. CBC Kids News looks into the new world of online art and collectibles. Welcome back to Our Vancouver. I'm Leanne Young. The digital world has become such a huge part of our lives for communication, entertainment, currency, and now collectibles. NFTs are digital tokens being bought and sold online. The question is, will their worth in the online world actually hold up here in the real one? CBC Kids News has the story.
2021 was a big year for NFTs. It's estimated that people spent around $25 billion on them. To put that into context, that's how much the World Bank spent on purchasing and deploying COVID-19 vaccines. Any way you look at it, that's a lot. So what exactly is an NFT, and why are people spending so much money on them? Are they here to stay, or is it just a passing fad? This is KN Explains NFTs. Have you ever heard of the Bored Ape Yacht Club? It's one of the most popular NFTs, and recently Justin Bieber purchased one for $1.3 million US. But he's not the only one. There's a long list of celebrities who have purchased Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs, and other popular ones like CryptoPunks. So what is a Bored Ape? Well, essentially, it's a piece of digital art. Check it out. I mean, it's pretty cool, but $1.3 million for a JPEG? Enter NFTs. NFTs stand for non-fungible tokens. Non-fungible means that something can't be exchanged or broken down into smaller parts. It means that it's unique or one of a kind. Let's imagine I become a digital artist and I create my own version of the CBC Kids News logo. I created it on my computer, and now I have a finished piece of digital art. But if I just post it online, that means that anyone can copy it or claim it to be their own. In order to make it unique and prove that what I have is the original, I need to add my digital signature. So I make it into an NFT. This process is referred to as minting an NFT. But not everyone thinks NFTs are a good thing. The biggest criticism is the environment. According to Matt Powell, a senior sports industry advisor who's written articles on NFTs,
it takes a tremendous amount of energy to maintain this history in blockchain.
There are similar criticisms about cryptocurrency and crypto mining. For example, Bitcoin takes up more energy per year than the whole country of Finland, and there's 5.5 million people living there. Another criticism, they are elite. The NFT market is hyped because of wealthy people, like celebrities, buying and selling these pieces of digital art, which increases their value. And their value is volatile. Matt Powell thinks the values of NFTs could crash, meaning they could be super expensive today and worthless tomorrow.
If people keep driving the value of NFTs up and up and up, and all of a sudden one day somebody says, wait a minute, I don't think this is worth that, the whole thing could collapse. We saw that happen with crypto last month, where cryptocurrency had gotten to a very high level, and all of a sudden people decided to head for the exits.
It's like trading cards. You spend a lot of money on specials, hoping they're going to be worth more money in the future. And then something bad happens, like the hockey player loses their mojo, and you realize that no one's going to buy that card anymore.
Anything can happen. It's the Wild West.
But the Wild West, as Matt puts it, didn't last. So will NFTs? Wow, what a wild journey into the world of NFTs. Maybe once we publish this video, we can mint it into an NFT and sell it. Oh, one sec, my producer's talking to me. Oh, we can't because we're a public broadcaster? We're not in the business of profit? Ugh, okay. But you get the idea. That's it for Can Explains. For CBC Kids News, I'm Alexia Sabel.
Coming up, a place we thought we'd never have to go again. We visit a bomb shelter in Nanaimo left over from the Cold War era. You are watching Our Vancouver. I'm Leanne Young. War means chaotic, fast-moving conditions where reliable information is hard to find. Even the widespread use of cell phone cameras and social media hasn't cut through the fog of war in Ukraine. As Susanna De Silva shows us, in some ways, it's made things even worse.
Volodymyr Vasilevsky has barely put his phone down since the war began, trying to keep up with the latest.
It just nothing exists to me right now, except, my people and my close ones back at home.
He just spoke to his parents. They're taking cover from recent shelling near their home west of Kyiv, and he's careful about where else he gets his information.
It is a lot of false and fake information. I'm following only Ukrainian news because they have 24/7 marathon. This is the most updated information.
While battles rage on the ground, another battle is being fought online. The weapons, misinformation, and propaganda.
We've seen a lot of people just taking old footage that is unrelated to Ukraine and portraying that as the latest update.
On Friday, Ukrainian officials claimed all soldiers on a small island were killed while defiantly refusing Russian demands. But Russian state TV is now claiming to have footage of them alive in custody. Some groups are now trying to verify what's coming out.
The scale of this feels very different. The amount of footage that's coming out of this conflict is larger.
Steps have been taken to weed out some false claims, with Facebook and Google stopping Russian state-owned media outlets from running ads. On the other side, Russia is controlling information coming in by restricting Facebook and Twitter. For those watching from afar, experts say do some research before sharing.
You don't have to be the first person to tweet out the new video. You can wait the 30 minutes because in 30 minutes you'll have a better sense of whether this is true or false.
So all the information how you can help.
Vasilevsky's focus now is on what he can do to help.
I'm just giving this information to the people. If they can help, any donation will be helpful.
The kind of information he wants to see spread. Susanna De Silva, CBC News, Vancouver.
I'm John on Granville Island, and this is Our Vancouver.
The threat of nuclear weapons is back with Russia's attack on Ukraine. It's been decades since a superpower threatened to use them. That fear was very real for a very long time all over the world. The threat over fallout had some building bomb shelters and bunkers in their backyards. But then the Iron Curtain fell, and the shelters were deemed unnecessary. Here's a story from the CBC archives in 1990 featuring shelters built right here in BC.
Governments responded by building nuclear shelters, such as the one underneath this grassy knoll in Nanaimo. It's still here, and it's still operational. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker had one of these built in every province in Canada in the 1960s. They became instantly known as Diefenbunkers. I found a few others. Queen Margaret School in Duncan had one. All the kids dutifully taking their places when the alarm went off. It's now used as a storage shed for old garden tools.
A number of private shelters still exist, but I find the owners guard them like they were King Solomon's mines. There's actually one located on this quiet street in Vancouver, but I promise to keep the location a secret. This looks like the entrance to a vault, but actually when it was originally designed back in the 60s, it was to take care of much more precious cargo, human beings. It was supposed to be a bomb shelter.
The walls in this place are reinforced concrete, but the living accommodation leaves something to be desired. At least there's wine. By contrast with the Western world, the Russians are into shelters in a big way. They claim to have a $200 billion civil defense shelter system. An entire branch of their military is involved. It's a mandatory part of their education beginning in the 5th grade. They've even produced a series of training films on how citizens should respond to an atomic attack. This is one of 7 tapes they made available to the University of Oregon.
When I was in Poland,
Mark Jaworski fronts a group called the Survival Association of Canada. It had hundreds of members back in the 60s, but now less than 10. Jaworski says the Russians are still very serious about their shelters.
the interest in civil defense in the Soviet Union certainly did not slacken during the perestroika. In fact, there is probably more money spent now and in a much more efficient way.
At least the Diefen bunker lives on in Canada. Here, we have an underground center capable of housing more than 300 people. It's reserved for politicians, their support staff, and the military. You can live down here, supposedly, for 6 weeks.
We have fresh air fans that bring in air from outside through filter system, and then it's brought up into the air plenum room next door, and it's circulated through the AC units that supply the various offices and bedrooms.
Is there a backup system?
Not as such, no.
What happens if something goes wrong with that system?
We have a backup fan. We have an extra fan for each. If one fan goes down, it brings the air in. We have another fan. If they both went down, well, then you have to open the doors, I guess. But that's all you could do.
Major Baker, the man in charge, was willing to show us the entire bunker. But there are some things you just don't do.
Major Baker, you have this thing on the wall. It's called the Alert System Status Board, and it's covered with the green felt at the moment. Why can't we see it?
It's because the information that is on that board is classified.
Can you give me a general idea of what would be classified information under there? Would it be movements of troops? Would it be movements of aircraft or something like that?
I'm sorry, it is classified information, and I'm not permitted to divulge that information.
The place reminds me of a medium-sized hotel circa 1955. A big dining room, the one the soldiers like so well. Sleeping accommodations that might be classified as cheek by jowl. Even a premier would have to make sacrifices.
This little room, not as big as some modern jail cells, is reserved for the premier, and his wife and family are not invited.
Fred Cooper, the BC Director of Emergency Preparedness Canada, says the bunker is still important.
Would it be fair to suggest that it's a white elephant?
No, I'm not sure I would go quite that far. There are a number of uses for the facility that still remain. For example, if we had a major earthquake, we could have a nuclear incident that had nothing to do with wartime. We could have damage to nuclear facilities in Washington state that would result in our still requiring this facility and the training of the people in it to tell people in BC where the fallout was going to go and what to do about it.
The center also contains a broadcast facility. It's supposed to be operated by CBC personnel, a technician, and someone like me. But I don't think I'd like to spend 6 weeks down here. Bob Gillingham, CBC News, at the bunker in Nanaimo.
When we bring you stories here at CBC Vancouver, we have award-winning photographers out capturing images that say so much. Still images add context and bring a lot more to the understanding of an event or an issue. Here are some of the latest from what happened this past week. Well, that's all for our Vancouver this week. I'm Leanne Young. Bye for now.